All right, hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 497, Talk About Flow podcast, part of the Blue Wire Network. This is for Friday, October 27th, 2022. It is Casual Friday. It means, as always, I am joined by my good buddy from Cover One, Aaron Quinn. What's going on, buddy? How you doing, man?
The intro is different than the outro, isn't it?
Yeah,
A little bit. It bumps a little bit harder coming in. I
it
like it.
does. It does. I
How you
like it.
doing?
Yeah, but you know what? I'm kind of getting. It's been a couple years though. I'm
I'm
kind
that
of
way
like
with
it.
everything though, Pat. You just asked me for those watching the video. He asked me. I switched from where I was yesterday. Like I'm the same way. It's like fantasy roster. I just tinker with stuff all the time. I
Yeah,
can't
me
stop.
too. That's I always tinker with shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting. It's been a long time, man. So I'm kind of in the hunt now for a little bit of a fresh new music. But yeah, I'm the same way. I tinker with everything. I tinker with video. I tinker with audio shit. I tinker
Yeah.
with all my fantasy football teams, which is why I always start out good and then I never finish strong because
Can't leave it alone.
I overthink, I overmanage all the time.
For sure.
So we tape this, and again, for people who are just joining us on Friday, Aaron and I tape these on Thursday morning. So it is possible that some kind of big news will break on Thursday, but yet we're not talking about it on Casual Friday. The reason being is that we already got this shit in the can by 10:30 a.m. I say that because let's start here. And we'll just touch on this briefly. Maybe next week I'll put up some graphics of the renderings and maybe we'll dive into it a little bit more. But just your quick thought. The Buffalo Bills this morning released just two photos, I believe. Stadium renderings. Been a lot of noise. Where are they at? Where are they at? Well, they just dropped two this week. Like I said, we'll show some pics. We'll kind of jump in that a little more next week. But what's your initial impressions based on what you've seen? I got a feeling you don't have a huge opinion on it, and I think we're going to agree. But anyway, your first take when you see them.
Yeah, so I mean, I've used to have really strong opinions on stadiums and how they're built and all that stuff and where the money comes from. And then just as I've aged and realized this is sort of the business of the NFL, I've started to care less about the stadium itself and more about, hey, this team is good and I just want them to stay in Buffalo, New York. And so as long as that works, I don't really care where the money comes from. I don't care whose money it is. I don't care what it looks like. Like, just the Bills are going to be here long term and they're going to have Josh Allen for the next 10 years. Like, those are the only two things that really matter to me, right? So everything else is cool. It was cool. I'm glad it came across my timeline today. I saw people complaining when the Titans one came out, but let's also keep in mind the Titans have to throw their fan base some chum, right? Like, they're bad.
Sure.
This is a drought era Bills move. Like, well, at least we have this thing to look forward to here. And all they really showed was just more angles of the same stuff. The Bills just showed really one angle, but my first impression is it looks like almost every architectural mock-up you've ever seen. Weird sci-fi lighting that you never actually see in real life where the sun just bursts off of this thing, but it's cool. It looks a lot like the soccer stadium that they said it was going to. I think it also has a very generic, like, it feels like the Allegiant Stadium kind of curves, the new look that stadiums have. And so I think you'll see a bunch of these ones that are being built in this current era. And in 20 years, when the stadium's starting to deteriorate, we're going to look back at it and be like, oh yeah, that era. I don't know if we'll look back and say, wow, that was a really good era of stadium building, or like, oh man, those things look weird and really to that time period. We'll see. Right now, it just seems to me to be just generic new football stadium that you would like launch on Madden, and they'll probably have some local feel to it. I did love the Bison statues in the
In the
rendering
front, weren't there like
above it.
three of them? I think there were like three
There
of
was
them.
3 of them together. They looked massive, just gigantic. That's cool. I'm sure that will scale down and look different. But if they do stuff like the touches like that, I did like the brick. That field has a Buffalo sort of like factory steel city vibe to it, working class vibe to it. So I think they'll add a bunch of touches like that that'll make it Buffalo and play to people's emotions. But outside of that, I think it's just like, hey, insert generic NFL stadium in your city and keep playing football.
Yeah, look, man. I'm with you. It's cool. They're gonna be Buffalo. Dude, they can play at Tonawanda Stadium out in there where you live right now. And for
Yeah.
all I care that the team is staying in Buffalo. I get why. I mean, again, it's only 9:30 a.m. right now on Thursday, and I've already
There's
been
no
on,
other news right now going into
right.
this
I've been on
game.
Facebook, I've been on Twitter, and it's getting shared all over the place, and people already got their hot takes. I will say though, because I don't think we talked about this as a stadium was being proposed, like whether it would be a roof, retractable, this and that. I think I read that maybe 35% of seats are going to be covered the way the stadium's going to be designed. Or was it 65 or 30? I don't remember. It was either
The
35 or
renderings do
65.
not look like a majority of the seats will
Right.
be protected, but I'm not an architect, so maybe how this hangs has more protection than it
Did you have a
appears.
preference on that? Did you have a preference on that going back? Like how much should be like I think we
I
all
don't
knew
care.
that they weren't going to put a roof over the whole thing, but
Right.
I don't know, man. I
I
like
don't
watching
care.
game.
I
I've
don't care
told you
at all.
this. I like watching games on TV. Okay.
Yeah.
I do. I like to be around either my family, myself, a couple buddies, whatever. I like to watch the games. I like to listen to them. This might be unpopular. I'm not a huge fan of going to the game. So it doesn't affect me that much. I don't like being
Right.
cold,
Right.
dude. That's what it comes down
Yeah.
to, Aaron. I don't like going in November and December when it's freezing. But I feel
Yeah.
like if I were a fan, like if I did have season tickets, I'd want to sit somewhere where the roof was over me if it's snowing or raining. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Do you care?
I don't care personally, but I'm at the point in my life where again, I'm also not going to a ton of games. But I was a season ticket holder for years and I sat up in the 300s totally exposed and uh I will say there was probably some bad weather games when the stakes didn't matter that I skipped and didn't sit through home. But I sat through some like bad games that didn't matter too in January and stuff like that. And it's not great, but there is an atmosphere to it. It is still football. I think a lot of teams play outdoors too. That is one thing during that conversation of we need to build a dome. That's cool. My thing was always the Bills need to learn to play in the weather, no matter where if they have a dome or not. Because you look at
Sure.
the whole Northeast, that game in Baltimore this year was a sloppy weather game. Where if they weren't a good weather or team that could play and were weatherproof in that sense, that would be a game that gets away from you. Like the game in Miami, they faced extreme weather, so that exists anywhere that the stadium is exposed to the elements. And Buffalo's another place where they're going to continue to be exposed to the elements. But that's the majority of NFL stadiums are outdoors. Like it still
Right.
is primarily an outdoor game that's played. And I don't believe that that should be taken out of football. When you look back historically, and some of the best of NFL films are games that are played in the elements. And that stinks to slow down a Josh Allen in this offense, but that is just part of the unknown variables of football, which make it the best sport on
Yeah.
earth. Like it's frustrating. You want everyone to play on neutral all the time and get the best of everyone, but football isn't like that and baked in nature. And that's created some of the best moments in NFL history. And I don't want to take that away. I don't want to homogenize the game to where it's just all indoors, all even. Everybody's just that would be fun to watch, but it would take away a big aspect of what has historically made football great.
Yeah, I agree 100%. All right, so we get that news on Thursday morning. I know you're not an NHL guy. You don't really care much about hockey. I know World Series is going on. You really don't care much about baseball, but
Are
you
we
do
already in
care.
the World Series?
Yeah, Philly, man.
Philly.
Philly,
Good for
Philly,
them.
and Houston.
Yeah.
I'm not a Phillies fan, but I will be for the next 4 to
Are
7
is
games.
Houston still cheating?
Well, not that I know of,
Okay.
but the damage has been done. Not to mention they beat the Yankees pretty embarrassingly too.
Right.
That was embarrassing to be a Yankees fan.
I will say that is even though I'm not a baseball fan anymore, it's still good to see the Yankees catch some strays and stuff. And Yankees fans. You guys are the worst. Yankees fans are the worst.
You know what? I'm not going to argue with
It's
you,
like you
man.
guys,
I'm not
Duke
going to argue with
fans,
you.
Duke basketball fans, Yankees fans, Lakers fans, Notre Dame football fans. You guys are all the same people.
You know why I'm gonna agree with you. Why I think Yankee fans can be insufferable. And I'll give you a specific example real quick here, man. So Joe Yerdon is a big Yankees fan. He does the show with me on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
We talked about this on Tuesday. So Aaron Judge, I know you're not following baseball much, but you do know Aaron Judge, and I know you know that he hit 62 home runs this year and broke the all-time AL
Mm-hmm.
record.
Oh yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
a lot of people will consider that the genuine home run record, in
Mm-hmm.
this era of non-steroid use or whatever. But anyway, here's my point. He did not play well, and I'm putting that mildly in the playoffs. He did not perform well. He struggled against Houston. He didn't struggle. He sucked against Houston, just like everyone else did. The offense, nobody could hit. Anyway, here's my point. Dude's going to be a free agent. Fans were booing his ass at Yankee Stadium. Guy's going to be a free agent. He gave you the best regular season history in the history of the franchise. And you're booing him when he could potentially leave. That is almost, I mean, considering what he's done for the sport and the performance he had this year, it would almost be the equivalent, I would say, of having at a minimum, Stephon Diggs being a free agent and Bills fans booing his ass because he dropped some passes in the
Yeah.
fourth quarter of a loss. Or you might even want to push it and say you did the same thing to Josh Allen when he was going to be a free agent with no franchise tags, and these guys could do whatever they want.
Right.
That's the shit about Yankees fans. I'm like, we talked about this with Joe. I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
You're booing a guy who had 62 home runs this year, man. You don't, and he's going to be a free agent. You don't do that. I know New York's a different animal, but
well,
no.
here's the thing: if Philly does that, everybody's crapping on Philly fans, right? Like they have that just sort of it's already known about them. Yeah. I think Boston, Philly, and New York City are all the same as well.
Yeah.
I think we can group that all in a pile, and they all think they're different, but they're all the same, and they're all a bunch of jerks.
Yeah, well,
no, they're not jerks. I have a bunch of friends in all those cities, but I'm as like sports fans,
a lot of them are jerks, though.
it's like like I'm abrasive on Twitter and abrasive in general when it comes to sports because I don't think any of it really matters. Like I'm not, I don't take it personally if you don't like my sports opinions. But these cities and the fans are just so arrogant in the way they deal with sports and the way they talk to people about it. It's just crazy.
Dude, I'm gonna tell you right now. Sorry to say this, but the Bills might be a Super Bowl away from the fans being a little
our fans can be tough. I've seen some mentions.
To take. I'm just gonna throw that out there on Twitter. Some of the things, oh, your guys punt, can't relate, your team punts. I'm like, relax, man.
Yeah. Well,
the Bills are good.
We've got a lot of bottled up. I think we get a little bit of a grace period to go out and dunk and then
talk a little shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, my point was this. Generally you don't really care much about baseball or hockey, but you are an NBA guy, and I do like that because there's not a shitload of NBA fans that are also media people that I have on this podcast and talk to. So kind of
although I guarantee you a bunch of Cavs fans are going to come out of the woodworks here.
Like your partner? Like your
partner,
Greg
Thompson? He is a Cavs fan. He's been legitimately a Cavs fan the whole time I've known him. He went to school out in Cleveland. So I'll give him.
You're talking about coming out of the woodwork.
I'm saying, you'll start to see more Cavs on Twitter here coming out again.
Sure. So, you're a Bulls fan. I like that. Just like Joe Yurda, Joe's not a Bills fan, although he is this week because he hates the Packers. But Aaron is a Chicago Bulls fan. I like DeMar DeRozan's pretty sweet, man. So is Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
They got a nice roster. I'm a Knicks fan. They're off to a 3-1 start. Chicago's off to a 3-2 start. I like the Lakers are winless and they look terrible. This is a year to follow the NBA because every once in a while there's a player that is worth tanking for, and I think you're going to see a lot of teams tanking that. Victor Wembanyama, 7'4" dude. There's teams that are going to straight up tank, and I'm starting to wonder if the Lakers might end up being one of them. Because if LeBron or AD go down for an extended period of time, that might be one of the worst teams in the entire NBA. But yeah, man, every once in a while you get LeBron or Shaq or Patrick Ewing or Tim Duncan. You get these guys who are can't miss number ones, and you see teams start to tank. And I think you're going to see a lot of that this year.
Is he that dude? Is he that dude? Is he a can't miss?
He is that dude. He's a 7'4" guy who's with a hand.
I've seen him on like TikTok and Instagram. I follow basketball stuff.
Teams are some years there's this guy could be a number one. There's no question who the number one pick's gonna be.
I don't know, dude. Those names that you mentioned are in now ancient drafts. I think the NBA draft is a whole different animal than it was really up to that LeBron draft. Probably, I think the lottery is an absolute crapshoot in the NBA draft, and so much of it matters where you end up, what that situation's like. Because, like, look at Porzingis, right? Like, he could have been a guy that changed the game when he came on in New York. Like, this looked like this was going to be the modern type Dirk player that was going to change the game, and the Knicks are a dysfunctional organization, and they broke it and bobbled it. It was like that gif of the infomercial where the guy sits down and he just like drops the tray all over him. Like, that is the Knicks. They just cannot get out of their own way. And then, like, but players just, especially a lot of European players with a lot of hype that come into the NBA, and this has been something that has historically happened. While there's been great NBA players, a lot of times they come in and end up being more role players in the NBA. Like, they just don't have the ultimate body, the physique, whatever it is, to be leaned on in that way, to be guys that take over games. And so this scares me that I would not bet my franchise to go all in tanking. I hate that idea. I hate it in all sports.
I generally do as well. Victor Wembanyama is not going to be no role player, though. I'm going to tell you that right
No,
now.
no, he won't. But I can see him getting bullied around in the NBA. Like, it's not a great era of big men and centers, but like,
Right.
yeah, he's got that height and size and speed, but like, he's not going to hang with Giannis. He's not going to be that guy that comes in and
Right.
matches Giannis and KD. And I think that's
Well,
what people think.
I don't think your squad's got anything to worry about anyway with tanking, and I think the Knicks are going to be good
No,
enough that the Knicks are going to be
I'm
a middling
concerned.
playoff team right around that cutoff line.
I'm a little
Jalen Brunson's a
concerned.
good addition, but
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm a little concerned the Bulls are gonna be like the Bills and be like just good enough to not make any serious moves and keep things together, but not good enough to actually make like a title push.
are you talking about the older Buffalo Bills? You're talking
The
about
old like drought era, yeah,
oh,
like that
okay,
just like
yeah, yeah,
stuck
yeah.
in middling like 8 seed, like fighting in that 8 seed range, maybe a 6, 7 seed, and it's like maybe if you get a good matchup, you can make a series out of it, but they just don't seem to have. You need legitimately three stars, not three good players. You need really like three guys that can take over games entirely, and I don't
Well,
think
they
they have
certainly
that.
got two.
Vooch just isn't consistent enough, and
Right.
he's a throwback of a big man. That doesn't work.
I tried when he was with Orlando at one point when I moved to
Yeah,
Florida. And when I moved to Florida, I said, "All right, man, I'm certainly not going to root for the Buccaneers and give up on the
no,
Bills
yeah,
or the
right.
Lightning and give up on the Sabres." I said, "But I want one Florida team that I'm going to jump in on and get all in." And I tried to do
Orlando stuff, yeah,
Orlando.
that's
I
like
was
me
like,
trying to get into the Sabres. It's not
they had
good.
him, Fournier. I'm like, dude, this team is whack. They're corny. I'm bored to tears watching them. I said, I can't fucking do this,
Yeah,
man.
Vooch
Anyway,
though was fun. Vooch is
yeah,
a good
he's
player.
all
Yeah,
right. He's all right.
he
He's
just doesn't
okay.
fit the modern NBA. But
I agree.
will say before you get into your next take, I believe wholeheartedly. I hate right now what has happened to the New York Knicks. Even though I'm a Bulls fan and I hated the Knicks in the 90s and like I hated when they were good in those early 2000s, the world of basketball is better when the Knicks are good, when the Bulls are good. When you have these big markets and their
Agreed.
teams are good, everything's better in basketball.
I say that about football too. I
Yeah.
feel that way about. I don't like the Dallas Cowboys. I don't
Football's
really
good
care about.
anyway, though.
It
Football's always
is, but
good.
when you get your Pittsburgh Steelers and your Dallas Cowboys and your
Yeah.
Raiders, the
The
teams, the
classics.
traditional classic teams, the Bears, when those teams are good, I think the sport is better as well. I don't have a Knicks stake. They're all right. I don't trust them. I don't like Tom Thibodeau. I don't like who was a Bulls coach at one time. I don't.
I love Thibodeau.
He's a defensive boring. He's the kind of guy
I
who'll
do,
get
though.
your team. Your team will stay around 500 forever, and you might maybe win one playoff series. That's your
Yeah.
ceiling
I know
with
nobody
Thibodeau as a
else
coach.
cares, but I'll say it that for me, it was really hard because the Bulls were obviously so dominant when I was a kid in the 90s, and they struggled so much to get to the point where they got Derrick Rose. And once they got Derrick Rose, it was like getting Josh Allen. It really
Yeah,
was. Like, I can't
for a
understate
while,
that
sure.
enough. He was the best young player in the NBA, and he was about to be on. People were about to talk to him after he won that MVP. It was getting up there with LeBron and KD at the time of like, who would you want to start a franchise with? Because he was the youngest MVP ever. People couldn't guard this guy. And then he blew out his knee, and like everything sort of unraveled from there for this team. And the Tibbs that you guys hate in New York sort of sprang in where he overplayed Jimmy Butler. He just couldn't get a feel for the room, was overplaying Noah and rode these guys into the ground. But they were so close to winning a championship right before, in my opinion, Rose hurt his knee, that it's hard for me to not look back at that era and say like, oh, if we could have just kept
I
things
agree.
together one more year, because Rose actually ended up healing up and being a pretty good player again. Like, if they could have just kept it all together. So I always will love Tibbs no matter how much he fails.
I agree. Well, I don't agree about that. I hate Tibbs, but all right.
Yeah.
So listen, let's put the
Yeah.
NBA on the
Sure.
side
Yeah.
here.
Nobody
We
else.
have
Yeah. We
plenty of
probably
time to talk
lost
NBA.
listeners
I
talking about
want you. No,
basketball.
I want you to. I want your opinion
Yeah.
on an argument. And I told the guys. So at work, I work a second job, and at work, I had two guys literally yelling at each other. Of course, after several beers, but it was a Bill Belichick argument,
Yep.
and I'm sure this has been argued many times. But one guy says Bill Belichick he's not necessarily saying he's the best coach in NFL history, but he's saying he's an
Right.
absolutely elite, a great football coach. Where the other guy, his stance is Bill Belichick is not a great coach. He had the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL for 20 years. His record has been what it's been when Tom Brady's not his quarterback. Where do you fall on this? Is Bill Belichick a truly an all-time great coach? Do you buy it? Because I think there's a pretty fair it's a pretty fair side. You could take a side either way, and I don't think you would entirely be wrong because there is merit to both of them statistically for certainly. But what do you think, man? Is he an all-time great coach?
Yes. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like, is Phil Jackson in basketball an all-time great coach?
Yeah.
Or are we going to take away from him that he was with Jordan, Kobe, Shaq?
Shaq. I you're
Like,
right.
somebody's got to manage that, right?
Yeah.
Like, a head coach is a organizational leader, a leader of men. As much as we hate the Patriot way was real, and I'm not talking about the cheating. Like, there's some of that to unravel in this too, but I do think you can't have that type of long-term sustained success without a quarterback. I don't care what your coach is or who the coach is. You can't have that long term. And then two, like you also still need other things to fall in place. There's been great quarterbacks. Dan Marino was a better quarterback than Tom Brady, probably. Maybe not as, able to pick apart defenses the way Tom Brady was, but in terms of talent, and he wasn't able to have the long-term success. So I think it all works together. I don't think you can take one part out and say, well, if you remove this, then he sucks as a coach and his record's low. Like, yeah, you would do that. Bill Walsh would look a lot different without Montana and Rice, right? Like, I don't think you can pull that back. Marv Levy looks a lot worse without Jim Kelly. You can't take that away from a coach. And a lot of those Super Bowls, Bill Belichick's defensive scheme and the players in that defensive scheme are actually what had that Patriots team winning big games a lot of the time,
Yeah.
winning Super Bowls a lot of the time. And you cannot take that away from him. Whether or not he was totally the architect of every part of their success or not, sure, we can argue those merits. But I think the wins speak for themselves. The long-term success speaks for itself. He's the best coach in my lifetime to ever do. And I think he's on par with some of the greats that I never got to see. And I think probably we have to measure on a curve because football during Lombardi's day, like it was probably easy to be the dominant coach. It's just like, again, in the NBA, I grade those early Celtics teams on a curve. Like I don't count every banner for the Boston Celtics because the NBA back then wasn't super competitive. I think in the most competitive time in NFL history, he's been the most dominant coach in an era that is designed not to have dynasties with the salary cap, right?
Yeah. I one point that you make that I really like a lot too is it's not just X's and O's. It really is. It's managing egos. It's player personnel management, and that was Marv Levy's. I don't think Marv Levy's strength was ever X's and O's. You know what I mean? When they had a
No,
good
yeah, no, it's keeping
coordinators
the
and stuff like
whole
that,
building
they had
going
those
forward.
egos. Keeping the team unselfish. I mean, they could be selfish individuals, but as a team, it was a very unselfish team. They have sustained success for as long as New England has had. And a lot of people will point, if you want to talk about stats, some people will say, well, his record's not great without Brady. You could also go and say, well, remember the year where Brady tore his ACL and they still won 11 games with Castle as their quarterback. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's just the long-term sustainability. And like you said, a lot of those championship teams, it wasn't Tom Brady throwing for 5,200 yards and 40-something touchdowns, man. It was strong running. It was really sound defense, fundamental,
And
good defense.
outside of Tom Brady, and obviously they brought in Randy Moss at one point, which he played anywhere. Tom Brady and Gronk were probably the only Patriots to really go outside. Chandler Jones had success outside, but very few Patriots have left in that 20-year period that a lot of guys would get big contracts after a Super Bowl, go somewhere else, fade out, come back to New England, right? Like, so within that, there is, yeah, maybe Brady makes players better, but not on the defensive side of the ball, right? Like that's coaching, and whether or not, again, it's Belichick, he's empowering coaches to do the right thing. Like he had the best offensive line coach in the history of the NFL. He's had great coaches that went on to get coaching jobs that didn't succeed outside of him. There's something maybe outside of the cheating. I can't speak to the cheating or not, but there's something has done in being the guy that runs an organization that ran a dynasty in an era where it's hard to have a dynasty.
The
You
one thing,
can't take that away from him.
if I have one criticism of Belichick, it's his role in the organization drafting, I think, has been less than stellar. You know what I mean? I don't think that has been good, but that's not really coaching. That's more front office.
And that shows you what a quarterback can erase. When you have the quarterback, you have a lot more liberty to make those mistakes.
Your Phil Jackson comment got me thinking too. It is unfair to penalize a coach because he has a great quarterback.
I think so.
Is Sean McDermott over the next 3 or 4 years, if the Bills go on to win 1 or 2 championships, is he not going to be one of the great coaches, at least in today's modern NFL? Because unfortunately, Josh Allen's his quarterback. I mean,
It takes so much to win. You need it all, right?
I still don't think he's the greatest coach, though. I will say I don't think Bill Belichick's the best coach. I agree.
Let's go tiers. Let's do tiers.
I think the greatest coach in Sal Capaccio
is Joe Gibbs.
To me. Yeah.
No,
think about it.
Out of here.
Dude,
No.
he took 3 Redskins teams to the Super Bowl with 3 different quarterbacks, and none of them were really elite quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that does it get more impressive than that?
I guess. I mean, again, errors of football matter to me. Like, I have a hard time going back to certain errors of football and like looking at stats and saying, okay, yeah, those people are better than people are doing it in modern times. Like, I have this conversation all the time on Twitter with people. When I look at this Bills roster, people want to make comparisons to those 90 Super Bowl teams. And like, I line up the players, and across the board, I have way more talent in 2022 than I do in 1990. Like, it's just not the same. They're different eras of football. The game is way more competitive. The rules have changed, and all that matters. I think you have to take it into consideration. And so, like, that's cool. Joe Gibbs is one of the best for his era, and I think what he did was impressive, but I'm not putting him up.
What about Bill Walsh? That was an argument. I heard Walsh. I heard a lot of Bill Walsh.
Why don't we stop? This is the conversation I had with your boy Joe. Buffalo wins. Let's stop this Neanderthal exercise of putting people in order of rankings and making it a popularity contest. There's too much context, and there's too much opinion and subjectivity in these ideas. So let's tear them up. It's Belichick, Lombardi, Knox, like whoever you want to put in there, and those are the top tier. There's that site that has that thing where you can tier generate. Like, that's how we need to start talking about these all-time lists and things like that, except for basketball where it's Michael Jordan at the top and then everyone else, or maybe hockey where it's Gretzky. I'm not sure. Like, there's very few exceptions, but in most cases it's tiers. And I think if we have that conversation, it's Belichick is in that top tier, and you can put whoever else.
All right. So to sum it up, you could say Bill Belichick's the greatest coach. You could say he's a top 5, 10, top 7 coach if you want to. But bottom line is this: he's an all-time great coach, and he's not just a beneficiary of having the greatest quarterback in the history of football. He's done a lot on his own. Right. He's a good coach. He's a great coach. All right. So there you go, LD. You won that argument. I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm going to play this clip for
there you go.
For my guys at work. Anyway, let's take a real quick break. Come back on the other side, and we'll get to some Buffalo Bills talk. Got a couple news items going on this week, but also I put up a tweet about a specific running back that probably did not go over very well with fans. So be right back. All right, I'm back. Casual Friday. Aaron Quinn, cover 1. Couple news items. Coming off the bye, there was a lot of hope and expectation, not an expectation, but certainly hope that Trey White would be making his season debut. That's certainly what a lot of people thought maybe a couple weeks ago when they opened up the window.
That was my prediction all along. Was in time to the Green Bay game.
Mine as well. Well, we found out on Wednesday that Trey will not be playing Sunday night against the Green Bay Packers. He's still working his way back from the knee. I don't know what you think. I'm not worried about it whatsoever. Like, what's your take on this? Does this worry you a little bit coming off the bye? Because now you're talking about what? This is his 3rd week of being able to practice, I believe. I don't know. What's your thought? I'm just like, he'll be ready when he's ready. And Sean McDermott said that, by the way, on Wednesday.
Yeah, Sean McDermott said a couple things. First, he said Trey wanted to be out there all summer and was petitioning to be out there, and the Bills wanted to be conservative with this, which I think is the absolutely right approach.
Sure.
We will get to talk next week before I think he's obviously activated. That window closes Wednesday, they said. So I'm expecting a Monday or Tuesday thing. There's no rush to do this for the game. If they knew going into this week that their timeline was to get him out of the no contact jersey and give him a full week of preparation without that, then they knew they were going down to the wire with this. And there's no rush to do that ahead of a game week and make it a distraction and make the press conference all about that. So deal with this after the game. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do with him. But I want fans, I said this on our podcast on Wednesday night, people need to pump the brakes a little bit on what the expectations for Trey White are coming back from this injury, because it's not even a year removed from a major knee injury. And while guys are coming back from injuries like we've never seen before, and sports medicine's better than it's ever been, and rehab's fantastic, and the Bills are probably at the top of the league in terms of technology and what they're doing in that field, this could take a full year before we get all pro Trey White back. And
Right.
some Trey's better than no Trey at all. So I'm with it and I want to get him back, but let's be cautious with this. I'm totally fine with this. I won't even feel bad if he's activated next week and is on when it comes to the next game, that he's game day inactive for a week, where it's just slowly working him in through the practice, getting him used to the game day routine again, working him in. The Bills have a lot of season left. I'm planning on 20 games this year, and I think they are too. And so I don't need prime Trey really until Christmas, heading into the playoffs January. And so I want them to be cautious. And real quick, I want to give hats off to this coaching staff, Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier, John Butler, what they've been able to do in patchwork as Trey's been out, with Dane Jackson, Levi Wallace, rookies in Kyer Elam, Christian Benford, Taron Johnson taking huge, massive leaps over this period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Coaching can't go unnoticed. And I think as Trey White comes back, we really need to hand out flowers to everybody who was able to patchwork this together. Not only patchwork, it's not like the Bills dropped down to an average defense when they lost an all-pro cornerback. They maintained being a top level passing defense this whole time without Trey White. So hats off to that coaching staff.
They were literally the number one defense in the NFL last year, and they fell apart in Kansas City in the playoffs, of course.
Yeah.
And so far this year, they're the number one defense.
They're the back
in
to
the
being the
NFL
number one.
Without Trey White. There's a lot of strengths on this coaching staff, and sometimes it's easy to highlight, some of the criticisms. But
For sure.
when it comes to how Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier, the way the secondary's been coached, it is borderline unbelievable. Because you're not even talking Trey White. They also lose Micah Hyde.
We lost Micah Hyde, and not that it won't rear its head at some point this season.
Sure.
I'm trying to be really cautious.
Sure.
But Hamlin has looked very good. Jaquan Johnson did not look great. Hamlin has looked really good, and that's incredible that at least the floor didn't bottom out when you lose a Micah Hyde. Like most teams, that's it. Like that's a leak you can't fix in the season.
So you could easily see a scenario. He's not playing this week. Next week they play the Jets. Let's just say, to kind of compromise, you said you'd be fine if he's inactive. I'd be fine if he was inactive too. Sure. But let's just say he is active. Don't mean he's going to go out there, start, and play 100% of the snaps. He might play, he might alternate some series with Elam or Benford. He might work his way into more playing time. He might not go out there and, like I said, play 90% of the snaps. I'm kind of good with that as well, because like you said, it's still a long season. There's still a lot of football left in the regular season, never mind the playoffs right now. So get him right for the last 4 to 5 games of the regular season. You know what I mean? When you're really making that final push, hopefully to lock down that number 1 seed and get that week off.
I do think they're going to be conservative with this as much as they can be, and they have the benefit of depth at that position, and they're comfortable in a rotation. We know that they've done that before. And so I agree. When they bring him on, I could see a scenario where it's, hey, game day inactive against the Jets, slowly bringing, the Vikings after that? Vikings after that, slowly rotating him in this mix, and then kind of ramping that up as the weeks go on until he's finally able to come in and you feel good. The Bills are a load management team. They don't take it to the level the NBA does. They're not going to straight up rest guys, but they're very aware of how much work guys are putting in practice and in games. And that is when they added the analytics guys this year. People thought that was like more football analytics. That was health analytics. That was measuring the data of guys coming in and out of practice, what their workload is. And we've heard snippets of how they're dealing with that on different podcasts. And it's absolutely interesting. I think it plays a role in how they're going to bring Trey back.
Elam having interceptions back-to-back games certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Your desire to kind of not rush him back as well. And plus Benford is getting healthier too now.
And Dane Jackson doesn't get enough credit for what he's been able to do in terms of, you've heard me talk about that floor a lot, and he is the Levi Wallace of maintaining that floor for you.
A couple of years ago, you kind of won me over with Levi Wallace, and you would say that a lot when he was a Buffalo Bill. You'd be like, if that's your floor, that's a good floor to have. Ditto with Dane Jackson. If that's your floor for CB2, it's a good floor to have. Other news, smaller news, but Jay Kumaro is practicing this week. That is good news. Good special teams player. Plus, he was starting to do some things on offense before he got hurt. The Bills, relatively, minus Jamison Crowder, are looking healthy now at wide receiver, which again, it's still a little bit too early to talk about Odell Beckham Jr., but I'm still not quite by that. Spencer Brown is not practicing, but he was called day to day. So that's good. So it doesn't look like it was a long-term injury. What happened to Spencer Brown? No Tywan Jones either at practice, at least on Wednesday anyway. let's spend a couple minutes talking about, because I still think if there's one thing about this football team right now that I'm not even saying that I don't trust, I think the Bills organization, and this is just my opinion, that I think the Bills organization might not trust. It's running back after Devin Singletary. So let's circle back to the Kansas City game before the bye. The Bills make Zach Moss inactive. And then I remember a lot of people, and I thought this too. I'm like, all right, well, this is here it comes. Here's the James Cook week. Well, they ran Singletary. I think Singletary played like what 80 something percent of the snaps,
Right.
something like that. I feel like this team, as it gets later into November and into December, I like James Cook long term. I don't think Sean McDermott wants to see much out of James Cook as a rookie this year. For that reason, coupled with Zach Moss, just has not been what we hoped he would be. I see a scenario where, and every year that look, football. I mean, there are a couple trades now here and there, but every year football is all talk at the trade deadlines. Like, oh, there's a million
It's more
guys.
and more every year. I think it's
Right.
becoming more common.
It's
Sure.
starting
Yes.
to, but I never feel like the Bills are going to make a deadline day trade.
But we just saw a trade this week. We saw Robert Quinn move for a fourth.
Big trade too.
Yep.
It's kind of getting into my point here. I think that this is the year. I do think the Bills are going to make a trade. I do think it's going to be for a running back. Now, I know Odell Beckham Jr. is the talk that he's going to be the big addition to this offense. I think the Bills are going to trade for a running back. I tweeted this on Wednesday. I want to get your reaction from this. And this is word for word what I said.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever actually predicted a Bills trade in several years, but trading with Cleveland for Kareem Hunt just makes so much sense on several levels. Most Bills fans did not like that at all. Obviously, because of off-field stuff and what happened. I think it was 2017, 2018 when that shit happened with Kareem Hunt. I'm not condoning it. It's just I trust this organization. If they were to do their homework and say this guy could help us and we feel confident that he could fit into this locker room, I don't think what happened in the past would prevent the Bills from making the trade. That's what I'm saying. Off the field stuff, bringing him into your culture, because we're hearing a lot about that. People who hate Kareem Hunt, the culture, the locker room, stuff like that, feel confident in the Bills' leadership if they were to do something like that. Anyway, on the field, dude, find me a better fit out there than what Kareem Hunt could bring to this team. To me, he's Devin Singletary and better. That's worst case. Or even if you said best case, worst case, he is a hell of a lot better than James Cook is right now. Yeah. Maybe not in a year or two, but right now, Kareem Hunt is going to be an unrestricted free agent after the season. So you're literally getting him a rental player. And that's what I think you want. The Browns are 2-5 and they ain't going nowhere.
Kareem Hunt already requested a trade in the in the spring.
Yep.
I think.
What do you think about that whole concept?
I'm trying to think I had so this is one I've actually, I'm on TikTok if you didn't know. And I almost made a TikTok about it because I put out a poll early in the week and I don't even know if I can pull it up right now, but I had a poll out about basically like, how would you feel if the Bills did make that move and traded for Kareem Hunt? And it was overwhelming.
Unpopular.
And I had thousands of votes, 5,000, 6,000 votes or something like that on this poll. And it was overwhelming. And I also put a witty, option for people to, hey, just shut the F up and leave us alone. And a lot of people picked that too. So I chalked that also up as a no, though. If people really care or didn't care, they would say yes. This one's super tough for me, Pat. I don't know how to frame what it is I want to say about Kareem Hunt because it is a sensitive subject.
It is. I'm not downplaying it either.
I don't want to downplay domestic violence.
Right.
Men should not lay their hands on women. There isn't scenarios where that is okay. But I do also believe in rehabilitation. I do also believe in those things. I've made it a point in my personal life to help people in those different ways in my own life. So I would be a hypocrite to say people can never change. Joe Mixon is in the league. He just played in the Super Bowl. There's a video of Joe Mixon out there literally cold cocking a girl in a restaurant, just lays her out on the floor. He had no repercussions from that. I remember during that draft of people just being like, you can't touch this guy. And now time has passed. And I'm not saying what his actions were okay, but time has passed and he has had no incidents. He is, by all accounts, been an upstanding citizen. People are saying the same thing about Kareem Hunt, that since he's been in Cleveland, he's done everything right. He's been in the community. He's taken the NFL requested courses on violence and things like that. I know he had a drunk driving incident. A lot of these players are flawed And if you look through the Bills roster, there's a lot of flawed dudes within this roster. People bring up culture. That is not a culture fit. That's one I don't believe. Brandon Beane talked about this early on, and when he was brought in, that is not about culture. Is not about choir boys, and it's not about guys that don't have blemishes in their past. I think the Bills are willing to take that on if they believe that the person has changed. Like I think if they believe Kareem Hunt is the guy that was in that incident, in that video, and that is who he is, I don't think they'll bring him in this locker room. If they believe that that was an incident that was out of character and not who he is, or that he is rehabilitated and changed, and they believe he can help this team get to the Super Bowl, then I believe they'll absolutely bring him in and deal with the ramifications of that later. And I do think if they win a Super Bowl, the people that care aren't going to care as much. We've seen people talk about boycotting the NFL and talk about how they feel about the NFL, and ultimately people come around to watch. And my one last point on this, I would urge all fans to be very careful about getting morally outraged when it comes to sports, because I'm pretty sure when it comes to moral outrage that I can find a hypocrisy for you in your moral outrage, whether it's the stuff that you do every single day that has things that should be morally outraged attached to it, or even just Bills fans who root for the Bills and love the 90s Bills that are behind me on the wall. If you love those 90s Bills, but then are going to say you don't want guys that represent a bad culture because of some things they did off the field, I got real bad news for you about the guys on the 90s Bills team. So be careful about moral outrage.
Be happy there was not Twitter in social media in the 90s. I couldn't agree more, man. A lot of these people are flawed, including ourselves.
Yes.
I get it. Again, it is a tough line to balance, because it almost sounds like by saying I want Kareem Hunt, you're almost saying, oh, okay, no, whatever, he hit a girl. It's way more. It's not that. I know.
No. And there's nuance, and
man,
it's more than this conversation. It's a hard conversation to have. I do ultimately think because of that, and maybe because of the Ariza situation, the Bills might just stay away. They are good enough. There is no need for additional distraction.
Good point about Ariza. I agree. I think that can absolutely be a factor on why specifically they don't trade for Kareem Hunt. I don't agree with you, though, where you say they're good enough, because I think if something happens to Devin Singletary, I think this team could be in trouble come December if they're relying on James Cook and Zach Moss. I don't think this team, forget about what you and I think, I don't think this team has a lot of faith in James Cook right now. So go get yourself a veteran running back. If it's going to cost you a fifth rounder or less, maybe a sixth that could turn into a fifth, or a fifth that could turn into a fourth, let's throw out a couple names. Let's say
I'm cool. Well, here, before we do that, Pat, because I am cool with adding a name. I agree with you that there's a weak link on this offense, and that's the one. It's running back. I like some of these names out here. I do like some of the guys you can add. I'm not just trying to add Kareem Hunt to this team. Here's my thing, man. Run blocking ain't good. And if you don't fix that, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's James Cook, Zach Moss, Devin Singletary. It's not going to be productive. It's not going to be efficient. This is a Buffalo Bills team that, unfortunately, however your philosophy of football is, they are going to live and die when the ball is in Josh Allen's hands.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
So the run game, I don't think I stand by my statement that they're good enough. Like, even with nothing behind Devin Singletary, this is a pass first, pass often, pass always team. Like, the data just shows that is how they're going to live and die is in the arms of Josh Allen. So I want more, but it's not a need.
Singletary's good enough to me that I think other teams at least have to have respect for him. I don't think any team has any fear or any respect for Zach Moss whatsoever. I don't
think anyone's respecting this Bills run game. Dude, when you look at, we had Ben Baldwin on our show, and you look at the Bills run game, they are the fourth worst blocking team, and like Singletary is the only running back that even has the amount of rushes to qualify for these statistics, and he's one of the worst running backs in the league in terms of EPA too. Like, even as good as he can be, like, it's just not a strength of this team. And I don't care. Even if you threw Saquon Barkley in here, I don't think it becomes one.
Oh, I agree with you when it comes to that. I just want somebody adequate and capable that if something were to happen to Devin Singletary, that you have a better option.
I've been told it's James Cook, so I want to see. Let's see. Let Cook cook.
Let me throw a couple names at you that are not Kareem Hunt, because, again, a lot of people might want to automatically dismiss Kareem Hunt. And you have a point, and maybe the Bills do as well. So I'm going to throw a couple other names out there. David Montgomery for the Bears. He's a pending free agent.
Devin Singletary 2.0 to me. Just adding Devin.
Yep. Yeah, Devin Singletary. Okay, I'm good with Devin Singletary 2.0. I think he's a pretty good player. I think the Bears stink. Again, they're not going
Oh,
anywhere.
Bear,
Khalil Herbert
Bears could be
is
in the hunt, dude. In that
yeah,
NFC,
but he's not
they.
even the best running back
I
on their
know,
team
I
right
know.
now. You know what I mean?
Well,
Now they
yeah,
got Herbert. He
but
looks
again,
really
they'll be in
good.
the same position the Bills are
Yeah,
if
could
they get
be.
rid of him.
That's a
This is why
guy.
trades. This is why trades don't happen that much.
A popular name that I'm hearing a lot about is that's why trades don't happen. I agree. Josh Jacobs. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's going to cost a lot of money or a
that's the
lot of
con.
asset.
He ain't going to come cheap. He's not going to be no 7th round pick. You know what I mean? Even if he's just a rental.
And that
The
would be one
Raiders.
I wouldn't want to be right. Like he's a player I like probably the most. I'm just scared of what it would cost.
I think the Raiders. The reason why well, there's a lot of reasons why I don't see this trade happening, but one of them is I think the Raiders, even though they only got I think like 2 wins right now, I think the Raiders might not think that they're out of it. You know, I think they still might think that there's
They
time to
have
make a
some
push.
talented
Yeah, they got
teams.
some talent.
Sure.
But anyway, Josh Jacobs, the name that's floating out there. I like Montgomery better because I think it would be a lot cheaper.
Sure.
Antonio Gibson's a good name. I think maybe what happened with McKissick and the Washington organization off the offseason, that might
I
be a
don't know that
huge
Bean
detriment.
wants to deal with them
They're right.
the way he talked about it.
But here's what I like about Gibson. He's still on a rookie deal,
Yeah,
and he would be signed actually through next year.
sure.
Don't forget, Singletary's going to be a free agent after this year.
Yeah.
He's a great player. I like him. Excuse me, I'm coughing here. I
No,
think
you're
the
good.
Bills only want a rental, though. I think that's maybe a reason why they don't trade for Gibson. I don't think the cost would be exuberant. Washington's got 3 running backs. You know, JD McKissick's not going to be a guy that the Bills are trading for. So
Right. Here's my thing. If you're not getting a real strong upgrade to Cook, I don't want to prevent his development. I would rather just
what is he developing though?
bring up Duke Johnson. You got Duke Johnson on the practice squad.
I like Duke.
Like I'm looking at some of the names that are getting floated around. Like I would prefer Josh Jacobs for sure.
What about Melvin Gordon?
No, bring up Duke Johnson. Right? Like
I agree. Melvin Gordon's. I don't trust him to not fumble the football, man. He's really fallen out of favor. And you would think with Williams out for the year that this could have been a really big year for Gordon and Denver, and it obviously is not. They got Boone. They went out. They traded for her. They signed Latavius Murray.
mm-hmm.
So they do not trust Gordon. They trust Gordon about as much as the Bills trust Zach Moss right now. I'm not sure if the Ravens would want to do the Bills any favors, but they're pretty deep at running back. Mike Davis is kind of falling off that depth chart. I liked him in Atlanta.
That would be more of something I would like in terms of like a different feel in the back.
Is he kind of like maybe they wanted Zach Moss to be? Somebody like Mike Davis.
Again, I don't even know that it's a Zach Moss problem as much as it is still a run blocking problem. Like I don't love Zach Moss. He feels like he stalls the offense out. And I'm ready to not see him anymore. But I don't know that bringing in Mike Davis with run blocking that isn't working is any better. I think his most successes come when he has good blocking in front of him. Like that is just what it's going to be for any running back we're talking about in this kind of mix of, unless I think Josh Jacobs can overcome some bad blocking. He's probably the only one.
One other team, the 49ers. Maybe they try and get something back because what they gave up for McCaffrey. Maybe they try to trade Jeff Wilson. I do like Jeff Wilson. They also got Tevin Coleman.
Sure.
Maybe I could see the 49ers doing something.
We can do some of the stuff they do, but I think those schemes are one of those things where you take the back out of the scheme and it's like when we had Breida last year. Like the idea of the speed is cool, but then it just doesn't seem to work out as well, not in San Francisco.
Bottom line, and we'll find this out when we tape next week. I could tell you're very skeptical that the Bills are going to make any trades, especially for a running back. I'm reasonably confident that the Bills are going to make a trade for a running back before next Tuesday. So we'll find out next week.
We'll see. I think I'm not going to put anything past Brandon Beane. If he has an opportunity to make this team better, he's absolutely going to do it. I think that is the position probably makes the most sense in terms of trade. That you would want to get a rental like this, and that the free agent market for running back is going to be pretty substantial. And I could see teams just saying, hey, let's get something. Let's get a 4th, 5th. There was that rumor flowing around for Hunt for a 5th or for a 4th. My guess is that value is less than an agent or somebody put that out there to try to drum up value. Here, coming back kind of full circle to Hunt, those names you mentioned and some of the assets that are going to come along with that. I also do think because of the history of Hunt and because he's already requested a trade and because the Browns are bad, I think there's more leverage to get that as a better deal than maybe some of the guys on the list or some of the guys that you talked about here. And so again, in a vacuum as a football player and in terms of maybe the potential value, that might be too much for Brandon Beane to say no, right? Like if he can get it for like a late pick on a rental on a guy that fits your scheme that you've already tried to get. We do know Brandon Beane called in and tried to make a trade to get Kareem Hunt before, or tried to get him in free agency, I think, before he went to Cleveland. We know he was in on him. If you've already been in on him and he can be had for a good deal, man, that's a hard one for Beane to then say no.
Right. And if he was all in, or not all in, but if he was even checking
Already
in
signed
on
off.
him when he was already going to, willing to sign him before he went to Cleveland, which is what after happened with Kansas City. If he was
At least we heard
ready to,
that they were interested, right?
If there's any truth to that whatsoever, then I don't think his pass would be any. It would not stop the Bills from making a trade.
Yeah,
right now.
I think kind of wrap my thoughts on this like trade deadline stuff like that. I don't think they're going to make a trade. I if I had a bet on it, but I think it's maybe 60-40 or something like that. I think it's a big weekend for the running backs against the bad rush defense in Green Bay. I think this would be the week to kind of put something on film to get something going and build some of that trust. But I still think it's slot receiver over the next month. Odell Beckham is lingering over this room, over this team, over the next month as he prepares to, make his comeback. It is really going to shake out. Isaiah McKenzie had a stronghold on the slot position this summer.
Yeah,
Crowder kind of took some snaps, but he's hurt. Shakir comes in while Isaiah McKenzie's hurt and performs well. Makes me want more. I'm drooling for a little bit more of a taste of Khalil Shakir. McKenzie comes back, makes some mistakes, makes me want a little more Shakir. I see a wide open slot wide receiver competition playing out over the next month. And if it doesn't play out how the Bills want, they have insurance and Odell Beckham Jr. maybe being able to come in and just take that job and let that play out again over the next offseason. But that's the spot that I'm looking at the most is I think running back is a weakness and is a problem, and I want to address it. But I still think slot has some ability to have an upgrade, whether it is Shakir taking that role over or bringing in an OBJ.
Offensive line depth could be something potentially that might be.
I don't know. Where can you upgrade?
Address as well. I don't know. I mean, I don't know specific players out there.
I wouldn't mind.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind getting myself an interior offensive lineman.
I would like to, yeah.
Or Spencer Brown's going to be a problem, which it don't seem like he's going to be.
Questenberry's been okay though.
He's been all right, but I still, if Spencer Brown was going to be a longer term injury, I wouldn't have minded that.
But again, those ones are hard to me because like who's going to give up their offensive line depth mid-season?
Shitty teams that want
really bad teams, yeah.
That's obviously you pick from the from the sellers at the trade deadline.
Sure.
Real quick, Bills Packers. Not really much to talk about it. You guys talked about that on the Cover One podcast already. But to your point, when you were talking about this being a good week, I am looking forward to seeing if this is a week coming off a bye where you do start to see maybe Shakir starts to wrestle even more snaps away from McKenzie in the slot, and we just spent a lot of time talking about running back. I want to see if there's a game where James Cook might get off. This could be a good game to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see him do something on Sunday. I'd like to see him get 8 to 9 carries and see what he could do against the Green Bay Packers. And maybe he looks really good. And maybe I feel like I'm an idiot right now for spending so much time saying the Bills are going to trade for a running back because I see Cook go out there and do something. But these two rookies, I'd like to see them more involved in the offense right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good opportunity to do it. You've come out of a gauntlet where I thought they could be 3-3 after that first 6 weeks. And now you're playing the Packers, who I thought this game may look a little harder than it does going into it here. And who knows, maybe the Packers get right in some areas. I think they got a lot of guys on defense, but you look at this rush defense and they're giving up a ton. They really are. And that back five in their defensive back is probably the best the Bills are facing so far this year. And so I think they'll test it at times, but I do think there's an opportunity to really lean into a run game and try to get it started. And I know some people don't believe in things like momentum and things like that, but I do believe that I've seen historically where teams get something going at some point in the season and that sort of builds on itself. The confidence starts to roll and you can get the run game going. We saw it years ago, that Sony Michel New England Patriots team, when they went on a run to the Super Bowl that year, that run game was trash up until December. And then it just started to click and they rotated those running backs in a way that was just making sense and nobody could stop them on the ground throughout that playoff push. And really, so that's where I'm at is you have about, if you're not going to make a trade here soon, you really have like a month to start figuring out how you're going to get this thing to work. And this week would be a good opportunity with how bad this run defense has presented itself so far.
I think even though Aaron Rodgers is a back-to-back reigning MVP, I think you're going to see a game Sunday where the Green Bay Packers, their game plan is going to be they're going to try to run a lot. I think you're going to see Aaron Jones and Dillon run the football a lot, try to slow the game down, which is kind of funny when you got a quarterback who's back-to-back MVP. But when you're playing the Buffalo Bills, you kind of want to slow the game down.
Yeah, the way Rodgers has been taking hits, I
Yeah.
agree. I would not want the ball in his hand too long against this Bills defense.
Quick stat. I shared this with Joe. I'm going to share this with you too. I don't know if you saw this or not. I was from Sports Radar on Twitter. Josh Allen can beat Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Aaron Rodgers all in October. Yeah. He can become the first quarterback since Troy Aikman in '96 to beat 3 MVPs.
Crazy.
In a 4-game span. Aikman beat Marino, Young, and Favre. I just thought that was really cool. Anyway, we'll talk about the game next week. And if there is any trades, we'll be talking about that because the trade deadline is the next Tuesday. Let's wrap with our medal stand. This is what we're doing every week now. Basically, we're taking 1 or 2 topics, not usually sports topics, just like to kind of mix it up a little bit here on Casual Friday. We're putting 3 people on the medal stand. So you get a bronze, you get a silver, and you get a gold, and there'll be a couple categories. The first one, and you're going to go first here, put streaming outlets on the medal stand. Streaming outlets, pretty self-explanatory.
Right. So streaming services. So YouTube TV probably wouldn't count necessarily as a streaming service, right? Because that's like my cable. So I really did it based on my usage in my house, I think. And so Disney Plus gets the bronze for us, mostly because my kids watch a lot of the Disney Plus. But there's some good content on there for adults too. I went through the whole Marvel series right after the season.
Sure.
Caught up on that, the Star Wars stuff. Like obviously they just have a huge catalog of stuff you can watch. So that's good. Netflix comes in second. Again, I think it's more just based on pure volume. Netflix just puts out so much stuff. And again, my kids use it so often. Excuse me. It's easy to use on your phones when traveling, so that's probably the most user-friendly one. And then HBO Max takes the cake for me in terms of quality of content and how much they have.
Okay. Mine will be slightly different here. 2 of my 3 are more because of like almost like their libraries, like on demand things that I can go and watch what I want. My bronze is actually going to be ESPN Plus, not so much for. Well, I do. You have to go to ESPN Plus to watch at least some Sabre games. Anyway,
I've never had ESPN Plus, so I should check it out.
I like they have all the documentaries. Again, going back to it's kind of like a storage space. Any of the old 30/30s that you want to watch, they're there on demand. The Derek Jeter documentary, that was awesome. Peyton Manning series is on. There's a lot.
I've heard the Manning series is pretty cool.
It is. It is really cool, man. He's a very entertaining guy.
He is.
My silver, I kind of got these flipped with you. My silver is going to be HBO Max for the same reasons you said. And again, so many great HBO series and docs are there, always there on
the production value of HBO is different than everyone else did.
Absolutely, man. And then for gold for me is Netflix. It's just because it's never in rebuilding mode, man. It's always reloading. It's never rebuilding Netflix. You know what I mean? If you go a week or 2 without no Netflix, chances are you're going to turn it on one day and you're going to find. I'm a big documentary guy. I'm a documentary and I'm a limited series guy. That's kind of what I've turned into now. And there's no shortage. There's never a shortage of those on there. I just watched the playlist. It's a 6-part series about Spotify. I just watched it over this past week. And I thought it was really interesting. Actually.
My problem with Netflix versus HBO Max. Well, one, I'm not super happy with the new HBO Max app. There's too much content, and it's the way they present it. Like they have all the Looney Tunes, the Warner Brothers stuff. They took on a bunch of different companies and put them all under the HBO Max app. And I really just want the HBO content there mostly. And sometimes it's hard to get into where the good traditional HBO content is. So I will say that. But in terms of, I think Netflix is absolutely volume model, right? Like they just blast tons of content and 20% of it sticks and you like that, but there's way more content that's a huge miss, where I feel like HBO is more, they're not going to give you as much, but it's going to be a higher quality of what they give you.
That's fair. All right. Well, Monday's Halloween. So that's what will be our second category here. Best Halloween candy.
Yeah, this one for me is pretty easy. I am going to go Kit Kats in bronze. Love a good Kit Kat. Peanut M&Ms, yellow bag, big peanut M&Ms. Fan. It's a classic for me. I just love that flavor, and then Reese's is number one. And if you don't have Reese's number one, I don't even know if we could be friends in real life. Like, it is chocolate and peanut butter is the best, dude. It's the best
Well,
mix.
we're friends. We are friends in real life then,
Okay.
because by the way, I don't talk with Aaron about, I tell him what we're gonna do, but I don't have any insight or clue to what he's gonna pick, and ditto. My bronze is also Kit Kat. I wanted to say peppermint patty, by the way, but do they even make those anymore? Like,
For sure, I'm sure they do. Do they still make Tootsie Rolls? Who's eating those?
I never liked Tootsie Rolls, man.
I know.
But I love peppermint patty.
And they still make the fruit Tootsie Rolls. Like, not only are they still making regular Tootsie Rolls, they make the fruit flavored ones. Like, so I'm sure they're still making peppermint patties.
My silver, though, I would have said regular M&Ms that had a peanut, just to put that out there. But I actually like Milky Ways, man. I like the little Milky Way trial size, or whatever you want to call them, fun size.
They're fine. The nougat.
I like those. And then I agree, man. How do you not have Reese's peanut? You were talking about peanut butter cups, right? Not
Yeah.
Reese's Pieces.
No, yeah, Reese's peanut butter cups. Yeah.
All right, guys, that is going to do it for this Casual Friday. Make sure you follow Aaron on Twitter at Aaron Quinn 716. Both of us I'm losing my voice. Aaron was having a sneezing attack on camera. I think it's.
Oh, I know. I started coughing. My coffee went down the wrong throat at one point.
You and Greg are going to be live after the Packers game on Sunday Night Late.
That's it.
All right, guys, make sure you check that out. Like I said, make sure you follow Aaron. Thanks, buddy. This was fun. And
always, man.
I'm looking forward to, I'm telling you, I think the Bills are going to make a trade before Tuesday, man.
We'll see.
All right, guys. Talk to you soon.